Listen, Nick Cage time. He makes a lot of movies.
If you say Nick Cage is in it, I'm watching it. That's all there is to it.
So Nick Cage, but he's had this resurgence, and he's made some movies that are being well received, and so it's great to see because we love Nick Cage here at Cinemondo. I think he's just like a very, very magnetic actor. You know, whether he's over the top, going crazy and going wild, or he has a more subdued, low key vibe, which I think he brings to this. But I think it totally works. The film is called Butcher's Crossing. It is streaming currently. It was just released to the theaters recently. Written and directed by Gabe Polsky, who is a documentary filmmaker who's won a lot of awards and stuff. So he's doing this film, which takes place in the 1870s, right after World War II, out west. And it's about these guys that go out and hide, kill buffalo and take their hides, which was obviously at the end of the movie, I don't know if it was 3 million buffalo back, early back then. And then there was down to 300. They
said something like 60 million, some insane number.
Okay. They were everywhere and then they were nowhere.
It was a completely shameless chapter in our history on so many levels.
Right.
Wiping out a species like that for pure greed and wastefulness. Like they talk about this in the film too, which I appreciate, is that people go out and just wipe out herds and wouldn't even really harvest the hides. They just did it for like sport, for fun. And they would just leave rotting corpses. In the meantime, Native Americans who believed in the balance of nature were like, you're killing off what we live off and respect this animal. So,
and there's a scene in the movie where just to let you know, there's also Fred Hechinger, who is in The White Lotus, and The Woman in the Window, and Xander Berkeley and Jeremy Bobb, who I always like. They're the four that go out there. And one of the and Jeremy Bobb, who was just there for the money, he's the one that actually skins the hides. But he said, hey, you know what? The Native Americans, or Indians as they're called in this film, because it's 1870s, they use everything. They make necklaces, they do this, they make knives, they use every inch of the bison that they kill, which is respect for that animal. We didn't do that as white men coming from the East. Horrible. We just
So it was written by Gabe Polsky, Liam Sater, Malloy, and John Williams. This is what's the studio? Where are the producers on this movie?
Sabin Films or Sabin Films. And like I said, it's currently streaming, and the production companies are Conqueror Productions, Ingenious Media, Saturn Films, Gabe Polsky Productions, Altitude Film, and Philpin. So a lot of producers on this. But I'll tell you.
Well, before we get into the deep dive, let's watch the trailer real fast so that people who haven't seen it can get a flavor for it. I think it's important to kind of just see the vibe. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Reverence or Old Henry, like mostly just like out in the wilderness, very primitive, very intimate and small. And so I like that, and small in a good way. Intimate, I guess would be called. So let's take a look at this trailer real fast so everybody knows what we're talking about. Here we go.
Okay.
Devil may have you and the angels lie. Better start running, 'cause it's gonna come.
Look how fresh-faced he is.
I decided to leave Harvard
and
travel west.
Looking for
Hope to find a
adventure.
stronger purpose and more meaning in my life.
What can I do for you?
Oh,
I would like to go on a hunt.
This will be one of the biggest hauls anyone has ever seen. Where are we going there?
Yeah.
So you're a God-fearing man yourself.
Why fear God?
You don't know. You'll see.
No. There's no sense shooting more than we can skin.
You will skin them, Fred, or I'll shoot you.
Baby.
What are we still doing out here?
I'm out here to hunt buffalo. Haul back their hides and sell them. When we're done, we'll sure have something to show for them.
You better start running, 'cause it's gonna go down.
Every time I see Nick Cage, I kind of smile, even though this movie has no smiles in it. There is no humor. I was honestly dreading watching this movie because I have a super low threshold for any kind of animal violence at all. And the bison history, what we did to the bison, we we took over and invaded. It's like, that is so heartbreaking to me. Like the idea of it, everything about it. So this was really rough. And I did this for Nick Cage and for the respect for the writers, the director, the actors.
Well, they had to
myself watch it. So it was very important to watch.
They had to show that stuff, and it is very grim and very hard to watch because they don't pull away too much. I mean, they do a little bit, but sometimes they just show it. And they had to show it because that's what happened.
And it should be disturbing and terrible and awful.
It should be. Yeah. It should be. And so, but what is incredible, what I really liked about this film, I thought the performances were wonderful. Everybody was really good in this. Nick Cage really has this, the gravitas, even though, he doesn't know what he's trying to make a lot of money. It's all about greed for him. It's all about money. How many can I kill? More money, more money, more money. The other ones, the young kid from Harvard is kind of doing this Ralph Waldo Emerson.
He's a city boy.
Find truth in nature. And that's his thing. But he kind of makes the mistake of going on the hunt. He kind of realizes, well, maybe this is not what I was thinking about. For it. He didn't have the stomach for it, but it is gorgeously shot. I mean, beautiful nature. I mean, wherever they filmed this, holy moly! And they really captured and the bison running. It was very thrilling to see that. Just so they got it all right.
They did.
Then, of course, when things start to go south, they stay there too long and problems happen. And they're stuck there.
I actually love that. Like you start off, you think you're going this daily hunt, like this day hunt. Then they stay a few days. And then they're kind of like, are we going back? And he's like, no, we'll keep going because I know where this herd is. I know where it is. And they're like, okay. And at this point, they're getting kind of lost. So they think Nick Cage is his character, Miller, which also his name's Miller. It just has such a go feel to it. So he's the only one. They're afraid they won't be able to find their way back. Like they're all like, just point me in the direction. He goes, you'll never find it. It's way too complicated. So he's kind of manipulating them to continue on with his obsession with wiping out the buffalo. Like I don't even think it's about the money anymore. Like he just was obsessed. So he was bringing them along, and they're getting, it's getting colder. The seasons are changing. Like they end up being out there for like a month or months.
No, 8 months. So they were there until the spring, and they
comes through, and they barely survive. And
they can't. Yeah, and it turns into so it turns into how greed. And going out in nature where you really don't belong there, and where else all the other animals are making it through. The buffalo that survived, they're fine. You see foxes, you see other animals, they're going to be fine. But these guys are freezing. They're trying to survive, and obviously things happen. This is based on a book written in 1960 by John Edward Williams, and it's considered one of the best Western novels ever written. I've never heard of it, but so it is about. Sort of like, okay, it's the West. It's these guys going out there being greedy, and then what happens to them. So it's kind of. So I thought it was at the end. I was like, wow, this really sort of came home as to why, and the ending is so fitting and proper, and so I just thought it was really well made. I thought there was it was tough to watch. Like again, if you don't want to see. Animals being shot, just like
who does really?
Right. I mean, you don't. But, and I'm glad they showed it, but I'm also like, okay, enough.
It was rough. I don't understand hunting at all. I mean, I'm not that. But one thing I did appreciate is that at the very end, they talk about the tribe that is actually taking care of the buffalo in this territory where they shot, and the buffalo they're actually filming. in the movie, besides the fake dead ones or whatever, but they were,
Right.
they apparently are tasked. They take care of the buffalo. They protect them. So it was nice for me to see this movie. And at the end, they talk about the history, how terrible it was, how awful
Right.
the white man was when he came through and wiped everything out.
Mhm.
And how the Native Americans have this territory and they're taking care of this buffalo and they've helped bring it back and they're protecting it. And so that made me feel better about the footage, knowing that they were actually well cared for buffalo that were being used in it. Nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me, because
Right.
one thing I really like this film, there's a few subtexts I feel like that are important. One is, like you're saying, the greed aspect. Another is we're seeing a little sliver. I love Westerns that are kind of that small little microcosm.
Me too.
Not like the big epic, we had
Right.
just a small group and they decide, let's go on a hunt, so they go out into the wilderness and, like you said, beautiful, but you have the X factor of Nick Cage leading the way. Now, I will watch Nick Cage anything, and he always brings something special. He was dialed down in this, like he just enough, like you see him, the shaved head is great.
Right.
He has little tweaks that he says, but he's pretty, he has pretty much control of the character. Love watching him. You already don't trust him because he's Nick Cage. Then you have the character himself treating everybody kind of dicey, like, I don't know if he's telling people the truth, and the fact he's obsessed with killing animals. And I also really appreciate that the boy, what's his name again?
Fred Hechinger, his character's name was Will.
I love how Will eventually starts turning on him, and he's like, he sees Nick Cage out there roaming around the buffalo trying to size him up, and so he decides, fuck it, I'm going to ruin this whole hunt. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. We shouldn't be doing this. So he starts shooting off his gun and scaring the buffalo, and he's like, Will, stop. He's like, no. He's like, we can't do this anymore. And he's like trying to chase the buffalo away. I love that he had that instinct to protect the buffalo at that point, let alone the fact that he knew that he was wasting everything, and the fact he couldn't trust this guy anymore because he was crazy.
He wanted to kill the whole herd.
He just wanted to wipe him out for some reason.
And they couldn't even bring that many hides back.
They already had enough.
They had a wagon. So it was greed took over. And but even in one scene where, like, the other character, his name is Fred Schneider, which I kind of laughed at because I thought,
that's funny.
A little
That's funny.
He goes, listen, we got to go. We can't. And he's up there by where he's shooting, and he goes, you walk back really quietly. If you make a noise, I'm going to shoot you.
If you spook him.
Yeah. So we knew that, okay, this guy was nuts, and they're stuck there because they came for money, they came for experience or whatever. And Xander Berkeley is really great as this kind of crazy, drunk, religious guy who's just
unrecognizable.
I didn't know it was him until after.
Know it was him.
Yeah,
so good.
So it's good acting.
He felt very well. He felt very much of the time. Like, I believe
very
he lived
much.
there.
I think
So good.
I don't know what you're saying. It was Nick Cage, but I bought it because I think he kind of got that Nick Cage crazy at the end, still in the low key way, and it totally worked. And I love the very last scene of the movie. I thought that was very sort of poignant.
So good.
And there's now 30,000 bison in North America. So they've come back, from basically the dead. And
300 were left by the time stupid people were done with this.
300.
And the fact that some environmentalists, I would love to see that movie, honestly, even though it'd be sad too. I would love to see who these people were that decided to just put their foot down and make this stop. It's like, I don't know how this happened, but I mean, we almost made a species extinct for no reason. It was like, and I love too, and we don't have to spoil it, but I love that all of this, it was more like a journey of the psyche, because Will keeps having these fantasies, these weird visions, and he's starting to feel like the spiritual connection to the buffalo. And he's starting to see, like you were talking about, like connecting to nature, and how humans were always the dark, disturbing part, but then his visions of animals were always kind of beautiful. And he was trying to balance that and figure that out. And I thought the fact we had at least someone in there who had a conscience, and I love that they had that. So at least we had somebody in there who was our way in that was sympathetic to the terrible tragedy.
He was the character that we could identify with most out of those four. And I've been through the Dakotas, and I've been through national parks where the buffalo come right up to your car, and they're just magnificent.
Oh, they're so huge
animals. They're a lot bigger than you think.
Don't get out of your car. Do not go near a buffalo.
Right.
Just so people know, do not do that. Like, I see people. It helps first of all, we've abused the animals enough.
Yeah.
You're driving through. You don't need to get out to take their photo. If they hurt you, they get hurt. So just don't.
Just watch them and drive by and let them live their lives.
Admire them from a distance. You don't need to
exactly.
But it's an incredible animal that I feel like is really tied to our history and who we are as America. And so the fact we're able to kind of bring it back from the brink, we still have a lot to do for Native Americans still. I feel like that hasn't really been fully addressed.
Right.
We're still a long way to go there.
No.
But I do really like that. Again, I can't emphasize enough how much I love that these people are taking care of these buffalo in this movie. That made such a huge difference. So comforting to me. It was really hard for me to watch. Yeah. And back to Nicolas Cage. Okay. Again, love what he was doing in this. I don't know if the Colonel Kurtz was exactly like, but at the same time, I loved seeing it. Like, I feel like I'm complaining about something I actually loved, but I feel like it did take me out of the movie a little bit to see him do that stuff, even though I loved watching it.
Yeah, and I guess I would go back. If we looked at we read the book, we said, is that was the character sort of like that, or did he bring in sort of the Nick Cage vibe? Yeah. Because you could have seen like John Wayne, back in the '60s, if they did a movie like this, this sort of this grizzled, hard, cowboy, big tough guy, that kind of character. But overall, I think it's well worth watching. Yeah. It's I was, it was an hour 45 minutes and it went by so like fast. This. It was like so quick. Yeah, and I was like, wow. So that tells you a lot. So and it's beautiful if you're watching on your big screen TV at home. Yeah. You're gonna see some gorgeous scenery and
I loved it.
Very realistic. Like the winter felt like winter.
They looked uncomfortable. They must have been shooting in the cold because the actors looked really miserable, and you can kind of tell the difference when they're just kind of faking the snow. I don't. Whatever they did great acting, great scenery, maybe both. But it worked fantastic. And and again, gorgeous film. I love the intimate smallness of this group and the dynamics and how everybody was, trying to figure out what to do to survive. And you're dealing with a crazy person who's the only one that knows what to do and where they are. And the one kid who's having this complete like radical shift in his thinking about what he thought is, I just dropped out or left Harvard and I came to, see what it was like to live an adventure. And you're like, oh, dude. And I love the way he started getting beaten down. Like he was all fresh faced.
He was fresh faced.
You can see him kind of shrinking. He's looking all, he's sitting
because he was just a kid, really kind of a coddled kid who never. I saw that early on. There's a beautiful girl who it works at the saloon, and he sort of falls immediately in love with her, but doesn't know what to do there, and so he's just sort of doesn't have any experience. And boy, does he get experience pretty quick. And
that was a little bit of a thing for me too. Is I wish they'd include a woman in the group maybe instead of just having the usual the whore at the brothel. That was really the only female character who made an impression. I wish they had included that because there were also tough women doing the same thing. They had that one quick thing of a woman in her wagon with her kids.
Which I thought was a really cool
good scene. Like you're just like, oh shit, that would be so scary. And like she was so desperate. And people are out there, they don't know what the hell they're doing. Like people went west with these big dreams, but they had nothing. They didn't have any idea. They were from the city. Let's move out west and get a farm.
And you don't know how big it is. Like you in the small states.
Where are you going to get your water?
You're out in Colorado and Wyoming. These states are huge. They go on forever. But anyway, it's well worth seeing. Check it out. I thought it was quite well made. And a few quibbles aside, I think Butcher's Crossing was a great view. So
it was great. And again, I love, the message is great. It's hard to watch, but a very important film to watch, I think.
Yeah. And let's just give a little plug to ourselves. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to our YouTube channel.
And join our channel.
There's our membership, but that's what you get for $2.99. Everything in yellow. $4.99. You get the member request videos. There you go. There's the prices. So that keeps the lights on. It does. So
the more members, the more content we can make. That's how it works.
And
Mark is working his ass off doing solo reviews and this for members only. So I am too here and there. But.
Yeah, it's fun. I watch a lot of movies that I'm not going to bother Kathy or Burke with that I think, this might be something worth talking about. And you get to see that on our Patreon channel or on the members if you join us on the YouTube channel. So thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.